This KFAN podcast is sponsored by Builders and Remodelers, exclusive Twin Cities provider of Elements Windows. Get the highest quality windows at unmatchable value. Visit buildersandremodelers.com for more details. Just in case you missed it, it's the top 5 sports talkers of the day. Now, it's time for Dan Barrero's Top 5 at 5. Brought to you by Gutter Helmet of Minnesota. Never clean your gutters again. Learn more at gutterhelmetmn.com.
We, as always, want to thank our good friend Johnny Sadfletic for giving us extended time, actually, on a number of subjects and even some juicy Timberwolves trade rumors as well. But it might mean shortening up and condensing the top
problem.
5.
First of all, do you like Gosh Darn It from Johnny Athletic or Good Grief from Lavelle Neal III?
I think I like Gosh Darn It.
Gosh Darn It's pretty funny.
Yeah.
It was pretty good.
It's awful bold. Borderline. Good thing we got the delay system in where you could censor it. Yeah.
Lynx were kind of in the meat grinder last night until they weren't. It was, I believe, an 8-point game at halftime. Let me pull up the box score just to make sure.
You just love the Valkyrie name, don't you? I kind of like the Valkyrie name. That's the new Golden State team in the WNBA, correct?
It is, yes. That's exactly right.
Are they the Golden State Valkyrie, or are they the California Valkyrie, or are they the San Francisco Valkyrie?
They're the Golden State Valkyries.
Valkyries, oh,
yes, it's not like the Wild.
Ah, okay.
They are the Valkyries.
It's plural, my bad.
They held them to, I think, 8 points in the third. I saw Marnie Gellner this morning. I was talking to her about the call. They basically shut the faucet off, the Valkyries, in the second half. And
so the roar for 44 is intact.
It's still intact. Undefeated. They're 7-0 for Boudreaux. 86-75 was the final. Got a little goofy for a minute, but in the fourth quarter, Golden State started to hit some shots late, but the lead had ballooned to over 20. So they are 7-0. Nafisa didn't even play Friday, and they beat Phoenix.
Saw that.
With the knee thing.
I think the Liberty's still also undefeated, so we're on a collision course.
We didn't look. Oh, it's not till July, right?
It's
late
not till
July.
I think late July. Yeah, it seems late.
We looked at that last week.
How about if they're both undefeated going into that game?
That would be something.
That'd be remarkable.
That would be something. And I want to pull up the next game. I believe it is tomorrow night, right back here against Phoenix, who, as I mentioned, we knocked off on Friday night. So
will Kevin Durant be there? That would be a clue.
Well, that one's going to if he's here.
If Durant shows up here for a game involving the Phoenix WNBA team, then the plot thickens.
The Twins are in Sacramento to take on the Oakland Las Vegas A's. Much to our guy from Fox 9's delight, Pierre Nugent, Sacramento native, who
the arena holds like 18 people.
It's
the ballpark.
Might be more than they just played with in Tampa Bay.
Yeah,
now, very
true.
different reasons.
Yeah.
Obviously, there was a hurricane in one instance for the Rays. So they're up in Sacramento taking on the A's, who are not very good, 23-37. The Twins lost yesterday 2-1, so they lost 2 of 3 to Seattle.
Did I see Colorado's 9-40?
I think that's right.
Ooh, yeah. That's not very good.
I think that's right. So 9:05 start tonight for those interested in staying up.
Well, it's the Twins had a dramatic... about as dramatic a come-from-behind victory Friday night as you can have. They're down 3 runs, 2 outs in the ninth against a closer who had not given up an earned run this season. And they ended up winning the game like 18-5. They tied it in the ninth and went on to win it in extras. The problem after that has been we can't score again. We're back to having difficulty driving in runs. So we lose the next 2 in walk-off fashion, I think. Against Seattle as well. And
yesterday was for sure.
And your guy, the third baseman, he's now at 0 for 30. Royce White.
I make you say it every time just to see. Yeah, Royce Lewis.
Royce Lewis, I think he's now 0 for 30.
Oh, man.
I think he batted ninth, too. They're trying to move him around in the lineup.
And he got pinch hit for.
Ooh.
Brooks Lee yesterday pinch hit for him.
Yeah, well, that's the issue again our pitching continues to be very good.
Paddock went 8 innings yesterday and allowed 1 run. Chris Paddock.
He was stunned that he was allowed to.
I know.
That was the amazing part. But we got to get the run. We got to get the run machine going a little bit.
Well, and you'd like to think this is a little respite. You'd like to think. The Sacramento Athletics of Las Vegas.
That's true.
And that is tonight. We can go. That's good. Lynx, Twins.
Yeah.
You can maybe get to that Trump thing later. It's kind of interesting.
That's a good story.
Probably needs a little more room, and it's not going anywhere.
Yeah, it is a good story, actually. I thought you were overselling it, but then I read what you sent me, and it's
interesting.
It's interesting because it has very relevant local angle to it. It really does. It's not just a local angle, but it's an angle that obviously does matter here in this town involving some key ownership changes. One that's already on its way with the Wolves, and another involving the Minnesota Twins. So we'll try to squeeze that in at some point. Kyle Potter will join in about 15 minutes.
Fan.
Got a ton of interesting texts that have come in today regarding a variety of subjects covered since the start of the show at 3 o'clock. Bradshaw and Bryant, KFAN text line. I'm going to save some of them having to do with the transgender issue that we discussed earlier. Dave in Chicago, making a deal for Durant because he's friends with Edwards? How did relationship-driven deals work out with Garnett and Marbury or Towns and Russell? Enough with the sappy high school lunch table nonsense. Well written. I mean, it's a good, opinionated, not sitting on the fence sort of text, but it misses, I think, several pretty
One of these friends is not like the other friends.
That's it. So there's two things there. One is that Kevin Durant is so much more accomplished a player, because the ancillary text earlier from Tom and Egan, Dan, is KD the Joe Smith of 2025? Say again. That is PST worthy. That might win the whole tournament. Kevin Durant is probably, by the end of his career, he's going to go down as being a top 20 player all time. Maybe some people might even have him higher than that.
Yeah, I mean, that's a fair assumption.
He's as an offensive player, he's definitely in that conversation. Even at his age, he is still a remarkable offensive player. Joe Smith was at best, complimentary role player that the Wolves obviously overvalued, but never in history. I dare say, even if Kevin Durant played 10 more years in the league, would somebody try to compare Kevin Durant to Joe Smith or vice versa? It's beyond preposterous. When people talk about the friendship, I don't think, for me at least, it's the reason you should do it is that he and Edwards, Durant and Edwards, seem to have a good vibe.
Right.
It's maybe that makes this destination more popular or more favorable to Durant, that he might want to come here. Maybe it helps you get him here. That's all it is. You're not doing it for friendship. Hey, we're giving a chance for Ant to hang with Anthony Edwards. It's you're giving Anthony Edwards a player who will do more to open up the court for him offensively than any player he's ever had. Albeit there are some warts on his game at this point, and the injury issue. How are you going to, on 82 games, how many games are you going to play? Right? So those are legitimate discussions to have, but it's not the friendship. It's that the friendship maybe means it's easier to convince Durant to say to Phoenix, here's where I want to go. See if you can make it happen, and if it's got to be a 4-team trade, go ahead. But if you believe in me at all, then if you want to help me out here, that's where I want to end up. That, to me, is where the friendship comes in. But it's the basketball side of it that can help take some heat off of Anthony Edwards is the reason you want to do it. Now, you can argue, again, how much is worth giving up at this point, and I'll gladly have that discussion with you. But the friendship thing is ancillary to the larger issue that if you believe he's even close to being the offensive player he was a year ago when he averaged 26.5 and shot over 50% from the floor, then you say, well, that's how Ant gets help, not because they happen to have a good chemistry off the ice.
Can I ask a Durant question?
Yeah.
Because I'm a fan. I like him. I like the idea of it. He's going to make $54 million next season.
Yeah.
But he's an unrestricted free agent the year following. So my question is it implied that to get Kevin Durant, you also have to do the Jimmy Butler contract extension?
Yes. The question is, what kind of a deal, what kind of deal might he be willing to give you at this point in his career?
Because one of the things...
as in a discount.
Okay.
For more years.
Because what Conley said today was you don't want to be a repeat offender in the second apron if you don't have to. When you do it, there's going to be a really good reason for why you are there.
Yes.
And I guess what I'm wondering is, could that 54 eventually help you get out of all the apron nonsense where you don't have to extend into perpetuity? Like, because right now they got to decide who they want to pay, how much they want to pay, how long they want to pay guys.
Correct.
And with all that, you're going to be flirting with various aprons and various taxes. And,
that's true.
And it's not even the finances, which we still don't know how willing the new owners are going to be to pay all of it. We've heard they're ready. They'll pay any luxury tax you want. Maybe Bloomberg helps them. I don't know. But I do know most billionaires don't love giving away their money just for no reason, especially if it's not a true contender. So I'm just trying to figure out if the Durant piece, because clearly Randall and DiVincenzo were ways to get out of the Karl Anthony Towns contract. Of course, there's a basketball side of it, and we know all of that. But principally, I believe it was, we can't pay this guy $60 million in 2 years.
And now that's what you're going to do with Durant, potentially. Yeah, is what you're saying.
Only for a year.
Well, right, yeah.
And so that's what I'm trying to figure out.
I got you.
Is what do you do with the Durant part of it after 25, 26?
Well, you know what the Wolves would hope would be they could do a Rudy kind of a deal where they extend, but then the yearly goes down. Because that's also what they did with Rudy to help them in that regard. I'm not here to say that any pushback on trying to acquire Durant is not legit. I think there's legitimate debate to have on the subject. My point with Dave from Chicago is what he's bringing up as like the main reason to get Durant because he's friends with Edwards has nothing to do with why the Wolves would do it. We can have the discussion again whether it's worth doing, what the price is going to be, what else you're going to miss out on, what kind of commitment are you going to have to him, injuries, all that sort of thing. But the friend stuff is considered sort of icing on the cake. It's not the reason you do it. The reason you would be compelled at some point to say it's worth the risk is he's an unusually effective offensive player at an advanced age who is showing no signs of getting like bloated.
Right.
No signs of it. He's not taking care of his body. Now, again, he could be missing more games just because he's getting longer in the tooth. Those are all fair issues, but you're not placating Edwards. Now, we ordinarily wouldn't want Durant, but he's buddies with
Ant says he wants him.
Then we want him. No, that's not why you would be doing it at all. Had nothing to do with it.
The other question I have real quick before we get to Kyle Potter is Sam Mitchell said with you a week or two ago that he would do it if he could play Kevin Durant at the 3, which that sounds good, but I started thinking about that more. And let's just say it's Rudy, right, at the 5, and then did he have Nas or Randall at the 4? I think is what he had.
He had
either one.
Yeah, right.
Okay, so let's say it's Rudy, it's Nas, then it's Durant at the 3. Okay, well, we know Anthony Edwards is playing the 2.
Correct.
So then where's Jaden?
That's it. That's fair to say. The only, I guess, well, Jaden in that situation,
because someone's got to play point guard.
Wouldn't start. Yeah, you're right. And he is a starter, obviously. It's a good question. I don't remember what Sam said in that regard. Because he did, in that scenario,
I don't think it came up.
Randall wasn't.
Yeah, but even so, Nas
back,
might be there.
Yeah, Nas would be your
take
4. His position, yeah.
So I'm just trying to figure out.
Yeah, how the pieces fit.
Now, again, he doesn't have to play there for 48 minutes at the 3, but
you like to think on wing guys you can make them a little bit interchangeable a little bit, but like you said,
but he's saying he doesn't want him at the 4.
He doesn't want him at no, I get that. Yeah, so you're talking about him at the 3 and ostensibly at the 2. I don't. And then where does you're not going to be able to start Jaden at the point.
Probably not, right?
At this point, yeah.
No, probably not.
That'd be a hell of a story if they could.
Well, if his handle gets tight enough, then that's good for everybody. So I don't know. It's just interesting.
That's true.
It's a great summer discussion. And obviously, we know Tim Conley, if he thinks he can improve the team, is going to do it. They're going to figure out some way. So I think it's going to be another fascinating summer.
Kyle Potter, who made a lot of international travel news last week with some updates regarding that story, and then maybe a couple of other items as well. Thrifty Traveler guy is what we call him. Kyle Potter.
Catch your Minnesota Lynx in action tomorrow night as they battle with the Phoenix Mercury at 7 o'clock. You can listen right here on KFAN. You can also hear every game this season on the Timberwolves Lynx channel and the free iHeartRadio app. All thanks to RBC Wealth Management.
Kyle Potter via X earlier this afternoon. New. Travelers raged at airlines last week after learning they had quietly begun charging some solo flyers significantly higher fares. That's a symptom of mistrust in the black box that is airline pricing. We're saying it's time for some transparency in airfare. What does that mean? I don't have all the answers. I may not have any of the right ones, but I think it's time to stop giving airlines a pass by saying, quote, they've always done these things or it'd be bad for flight deals. Just 1 ounce of additional disclosure would indeed be good. Kyle Potter via Thrifty Traveler, kind enough to join us now. So let's work backwards from what inspired those comments today, the story that you guys broke last week. Let's start with that story.
Yeah, so last week I was being really selfish, not on company time, in case my boss is listening, but I was searching for flights for my wife and I. And what I do, a lot of people I think do, whether they're traveling by themselves or traveling with a spouse or family or whatever, you start by searching for one passenger. So we needed to get from Minneapolis to New York. And so I fired that up on Delta.com and I see, $206. Great. All right. That's fine. We can live with that. Mm-hmm. And then I bump that up to 2 and run it again. And I do a double and triple take. It's like, why is this flight $154 now? What happened? Did I mess up the date? Did I change the airport code? What did I screw up here? And I had to rerun it like 3 times before it was very clear that the price of booking 2 tickets, the fare per ticket, was significantly lower than the fare for booking just 1. And this is very unusual. This is the opposite of how airfare usually works. Usually, if you're searching for 2, 4, 6 tickets, it may end up costing you more per ticket than just 1 or 2 because there might be limited inventory at that price. So, this set off some alarm bells. And within a matter of hours, we were able to confirm, with the help of our team at Thrifty Traveler, not only was this not a glitch, not only was this happening at Delta, it was happening at all the big 3 major U.S. airlines, American, Delta, and United. And while it was hit or miss, at least at the time we started reporting on this last Wednesday and Thursday, it was undeniable that airlines were penalizing some solo passengers for booking just 1 ticket at a time.
And so you mentioned that generally it's the other way around. Have you gotten any sense, before we get to the Sarwanga backpedal that the airlines have done, at least several of them, is there any rational reason that might explain why this reversal was being implemented and why it was being tried out by these air carriers?
Well, the airlines aren't talking, and I'm not surprised about that because they're pretty secretive about how and why they set their fares where they do. None of them have responded to our request for comment. All of them have pretty much ghosted us. That said, logicking it out, the theory is, and I think it's a pretty good one, is that this was designed to punish business travelers who airlines not just believe, but know are less price sensitive than a family of 4 going on a vacation once a year. And therefore they know that if they charge those people $442 instead of $223 for a one-way domestic flight, they're probably going to get that money out of them. So I think it's just a continuation of what we've seen over the course of the last couple of decades, where airlines are just continuing to find torturously creative new ways to get more money out of people. And while this might have been, in fact, I know was designed to get more money out of business travelers, business travelers are not the only people that are booking 1-passenger tickets. I mean, I do this all the time for my personal travels as well as my work. And, I work for a place called Thrifty Traveler. We don't have an unlimited travel budget. Solo travelers are groups of friends that are booking, a group trip, but book their flights separately. It's family members who need to book a last-minute flight and get somewhere across the country to attend to a medical emergency. I mean, the cost of this could have been pretty significant in the long run, I think, to a lot of people.
How quickly did the backpedal begin by the air carriers?
I will be honest, I did not expect change so soon. So, we first published a story looking primarily at Delta to start last Wednesday. By Thursday morning, we had confirmed that this pattern was not just also in place at American and United, but also in many cases much more severe, that the premiums that they were charging solo passengers were significantly higher than what even Delta was doing. And then by Thursday afternoon, I got a tip, which we then confirmed, that Delta had started to pull out the fares that were pushing solo passengers into a higher, pricier fare class. And then by Friday evening, United had done the same. So, it was really a matter of about 36 hours before, from the start of what quickly became a national news story until the airlines really started to claw things back.
And when you say, claw things back, I thought I read somewhere, I thought it was even on your site, that what several of them have done so far actually is raise all the prices, that there is no distinction, but the prices are actually, it's almost like everybody's being penalized. Did I read that wrong?
Would you expect anything less from the airlines? Right? No, you're right. And this is a wrinkle, and which is why I say this story isn't over. So, the way that the airlines achieved this, American, Delta, and United, is by writing into the rules of their cheaper fare, the ones that only two people could book, a rule that says you must have at least two adults on this reservation. And so if you don't search for at least two adults, you automatically bump into a higher priced fare class. So the easiest way for Delta and United to undo this and basically try to kill the story and kill all the negative press that they were getting heading into the weekend was just to remove those fares. So that was just kind of an automatic way of taking out this system that was, being in some ways discriminatory towards single travelers. The downside of that is that means that everybody, when they're searching for these flights from Minneapolis to Miami or Chicago to Asheville or whatever, they're now seeing higher prices than they were, last Wednesday. I think it's important to keep in mind that airfare changes a lot. I expect this to normalize over the course of the next couple of days. If it doesn't, I'll come back on your show, Barrero, and I'll raise my hand and say, you know what, I was wrong. This ended up being pricier for everybody, but I don't think that will be the case. And I think part of why the airlines have done this the way that they have in quote unquote correcting this from Delta and United is that they're trying to preserve the spin that they were just trying to offer groups of travelers a cheaper fare. And had they just wiped out the pricier fares, it would have been just so blatantly obvious what they were trying to do.
Exactly. Yeah, that makes a great deal of sense. I'll be surprised if you're going to have to come back on the show for that reason. So, there are people who will say, wait a minute, Kyle Potter. They're in the business for profit. They can do whatever the hell they want to do. People can decide how they want to handle it on the fares. I assume part of the comeback to that would be, but you can't have it both ways if you're the airline industry. You can't have your hands out for all the bailout money that you got, less than 5 years ago, and turn around and be surprised that people are going to push back a little bit on what you do as a company. Say, you can do whatever you want to do. So where are you on that whole discussion?
I think that's a big part of it. The U.S. airline industry received $54 billion in taxpayer subsidies to survive the pandemic. To say nothing of the fact that, airlines are for-profit companies. Yes, they exist to make a return for shareholders. No one's disputing that. But they're also in charge of the nation's probably largest and most important infrastructure system. So I do think those two things combined, there needs to be some additional responsibility or transparency to everyday consumers. Whether that should be written into law or should be something that airlines should just view as their responsibility is a question for somebody else. But I do think that they can and should, especially after the response that they got for doing this and doing it so sneakily. There's some responsibility here, especially in a country where we just have American travelers have virtually no rights as passengers. Airlines are free under the system that we have to do more or less whatever they want, to charge what they want, to cancel flights without penalty, to change flights and delay them for hours upon hours upon hours without any additional compensation, or even in some cases, a guarantee that they're going to put you up in a hotel if you get stranded somewhere. And I think what people have come to, myself included, is it kind of feels like every time we feel like airlines have hit rock bottom for how they treat passengers and how flights get priced and how much they nickel and dime us, they just find a new low. And that's what happened last week.
Were you surprised at the reaction that this story got? I mean, I got to believe for you guys, this was like, a pretty significant step in building. And I know you're not about building the brand or anything. You do a good job of what you want to do. But, from the outside, Gaardsy and I were talking about this. I mean, this looks like the kind of story that can really put you on the map in a way that you guys weren't before. Is that fair?
I don't know. I'll be honest. I think we're all just focused on the story and doing what we believe is right for consumers.
Yep.
So I'm not surprised that it resonated with people and struck a chord for all of the reasons that I just told you, because I think air travel in general, and what from the point of booking flights to going through airport security to being on the plane, can feel like a slap in the face. And it only really seems to many people to get worse. And while I don't personally always feel that way, I know that a lot of people do. And I knew that when we saw that this was happening, that airlines were traveling some solo travelers significantly higher fares, that this was something that deserved the spotlight, because it's pretty egregious. And I don't understand how anybody who writes about travel in the way that we do can look at this and just say, well, this is what airlines do, because I think that's beside the point. I think the question should be, should airlines do this? And we very clearly had a point of view, which is no, and you should know about it.
Well, I think at the start, I mean, you ended up with a commentary on it, but I think at the start is you're covering the news, right? It starts there. You're breaking a story that otherwise, had not been, no one had figured it out to the degree you did. And then you guys take it a step further with the commentary. But there's a news aspect to this to say, no, you can have, even if you have different opinions on it, you can't deny the news value of it, which to me is, I think, what elevated this story very much from the beginning. Let me get to a text from someone who has a slightly different point of view. This person acknowledges they're a recently retired airline employee of 30 plus years. I have to respectfully play devil's advocate here on the airlines charging more for the single traveler. As your guest will tell you, the single traveler is the bread and butter of the airline income, more specifically the last-minute business traveler who expenses his company for the ticket. I think it's reasonable then that the airlines acknowledge the price disparity and raise the lower fare to match the higher. We mustn't forget airlines provide tens of thousands of lucrative careers throughout the world. If the non-business traveler, or any traveler for that matter, doesn't want to pay the price to fly, fine, take the bus, and we'll see you at your destination in 2 days. He admits, it's true, I'm biased, Dan, but there seems to be a bit of entitlement here. What would you say to Texter Guy?
There's a lot there. I don't necessarily disagree with the entire comment, but I would just point out that, airlines have always done things to target the lucrative business traveler. And that is part of the business model, and that is part of the mission as a publicly traded corporation whose existence depends upon delivering shareholder returns. That's all fine. I'm not trying to poke holes in the mission of a publicly traded airline. What I have problems with is that airlines have always done these things, as we've talked about, to punish business travelers. They have sold fares that have a 7-day requirement. So if you travel from a Saturday to a Wednesday,
you're right,
or better yet, from a Monday to a Wednesday, you're going to pay a much higher fare than from a Monday to a Monday, because airlines know and believe that those people who travel for 7+ days are probably families. And the same thing is true for, somebody who books within 14 or 21 days of departure, that those fares are going to be much higher because those people really need those tickets, and those people are probably business travelers who aren't as sensitive to the higher prices that come in the last 2 or 3 weeks of departure. My problem is that whoever you are as a solo traveler, you can't clone yourself. There's no fix for this. There's no way for a solo traveler, whoever you are, whether you are a price-sensitive business traveler or just a solo traveler going on your own trip or whatever, there is no way to get around this system. So how do people win in this? It feels not just sneaky the way that airlines did this, but also like it boxed in a broader group of people than they intended to, or maybe they intended to do it as well. I don't know. But either way, it just feels like a different level of unfairness to me.
Well, I really think, again, a lot of this does go back to the $50+ billion bailout. It's if you need that help and you're willing to take that help, I think you are inviting Congress, you are inviting legislators to get more involved in the process. You could say, we don't have to get involved in anything, but you took the money that you think you'd had to take, and that I think a lot of people felt had to be given to them because it's too important an industry to let it flail to that degree. But that does come at a price in opening the door. Now, we can argue about, whether Congress is more likely to screw things up than to help or to grandstand, whatever. But I think I agree with you guys that that's a big piece of this that cannot be forgotten at all. Let me get to a couple more texts. Sounds like the airlines need some competition. High-speed rail, please. I don't know how much high-speed rail you cover. I don't think we have a lot of evidence that, the high-speed rail that we started in California, I think now it's costing another $1 billion every week. And I still think it's projected to be one of the projects to be completed like in the year 2113. So I don't think I'm not sure that's going to be a realistic form of competition for the airlines.
Right. I mean, I think we're not decades at this point, probably a century or more behind
yes.
where we would need to be in order to establish high-speed rail as an alternative. And I'm not saying that as a means to say, so don't bother.
Right.
I'm saying that as a means to say, if your goal is competition for the airlines, we got to find something else.
Yeah, I think that's indeed fair to say. Now, did you refresh my memory here? Is there one airline that is not reversed yet, or have they all done the back pedal? Where we are with that? Where are we with that, as far as you guys know?
Yeah, so let's do some inventory quick. Friday afternoon, Delta reverse track pulled out these fares that punish solo travelers. A few hours after that, United did as well. American, as I last checked, which was about a half hour ago, still is doing this. So you can book a one-way ticket from Charlotte to Fort Myers for $442 for one passenger. And if you bump that up to two, it drops to $226 a passenger. So that has not changed there yet. And then for the rest of the U.S. airlines, we haven't seen any evidence that they even began doing this. So Alaska, JetBlue,
right,
Southwest, et cetera. That doesn't mean that they haven't done this on a different scale. It just means we haven't seen it yet from them.
So is it likely that once they sit down in their boardrooms and they get their crisis managers together, that one or more of the airlines are going to publicly address this? You said none of them have returned your phone calls to this point. Is there a possibility that we are going to see a public addressing of this situation, or are they just going to ignore it, do you think?
I mean, I expect publicly that they will ignore it. I think that there are enough people out there making the case, wrongly from my perspective, but the case is there, that the airlines are just doing what they do, and they should be free to do so. What I expect we will hear is at some point, whether it's at one of the big conferences that they do or in quarterly earnings calls with investors, in the middle of July would be the next one, is that they'll get some questions about this, and the airlines will start to explain themselves to investors, not to the general traveling public.
Yeah, that probably makes more sense. By the way, my sources say you guys do have a sale going on right now for your the Thrifty Traveler Premium service. Tell me what that's all about.
Is your source Gaardsy?
It might be. Although there might be a second one.
Hold on. Kyle doesn't reveal his. Why are you revealing yours?
That's a good point, yeah.
Sources are sacred.
Deep throat.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I take it all back. No, your source, whoever he or she may be, is correct. We're starting a sale. I want to point out we've been planning this for literally months. It just so happened to coincide with you guys asking me on, so I figured I'd mention it to a source who shall not be named. We're getting ready to run a big sale on our flight deal alert service later this week, but it's already live if people want to take advantage. Promo code is B-Day, 4 letters, uppercase. Gets you $50 or 50% off, the first year of service.
That's not a bad little perk. That's very good. One last question for you that just came in, and maybe we've kind of covered this, so forgive me if we have. This is from 952 Guy, who says, I'm not understanding why this isn't just what would be classified as volume discount.
It's a good and very common question that I've fielded, I feel like, hundreds of times, which I'm not saying that is a bad question. I think that you need to understand that airlines are not Costco and Target. That, most importantly, these kinds of discounts aren't advertised. So had Delta and American and United, put out an email or had somewhere on their website that, hey, if you book these one-way domestic flights and you book them for 2 passengers, we're going to give you a pretty sweet discount. I would have nothing to say. I would say good on them, good little sale, check it out. You can save, for a trip with your spouse or with your family. Looks good. Good job on you, airlines. But airlines don't talk about these things. This was not a discount for group travel. This was a penalty for solo travel. And it was something that they wrote into the terms of fare rules that virtually no one, except for weirdos like me, reads.
Oh, that's very good. Congratulations on the reporting. Really good work, man. We, as always, appreciate the time, and we'll definitely stay in touch as this and other stories play out.
Thanks, Barrero. Story's not over, but it's a big story, so we're going to keep on it.
Keep on it, man. That's exactly it. Thanks, Kyle. Kyle Potter is the executive editor of Thrifty Traveler, and that's now a site that is getting a lot of, I would say, overdue attention, because we've been talking to Kyle for literally years and have found his insight, his news, his reporting outstanding when it comes to travel stories. And this is a big one. I mean, this is one of the biggest ones, I think, the Thrifty Traveler has biggest scoops that it has ever had, and interestingly had almost an immediate impact on several of the airlines. Let's make this the top of the hour pause. We come back with this question. Is it too late to go after Aaron Rodgers? I'll explain next. Well, Gaardsy has sent me a couple of tweets today. Well, several, but a couple in particular, including this was from 320. Will, is it, how do you pronounce his last name? Ragatz. Do you know?
I don't know.
I apologize if I'm going to mispronounce it. Ragatz?
Ragatz.
I'm going to go Ragatz.
That's what I'm going with.
Was fun being back out at TCO for OTAs this afternoon. It wasn't the sharpest day for J.J. McCarthy, who was picked off by Isaiah Rodgers. No! But it's also early June, and it was super windy, so take that for what It is. So already we got J.J. McCarthy remorse, and then to boot, Pro Football Talk tweet. The media got their first look at Seahawks quarterback Sam Darnold. He threw 2 interceptions in a 7-on-7 goal line setting. Now, of course, it's early June. Obviously, none of this means everything, but the truth is we're all frauds on this because in 2025, it always means something, right? I mean,
it sure does.
It certainly feels like it because we cover it, we saturation coverage it over and over and over again. So is it too late? If we got, struggles already from JJ, and I guess we feel better about not doubling down on Sam Darnold.
He left the KOC nest and look
what
now.
happened. Yep. Now he's throwing picks left and right.
Took the bag.
Rodgers still hasn't signed with Pittsburgh.
He is not yet. Do we have any of their mini camp or OTAs reports? We need to check in how their quarterbacks are doing.
It's not a good list, I don't think.
No.
Is it not a very pedestrian list?
Yeah, including your old guy, right? Isn't Fields still there? Or did he sign somewhere else?
Fields with the Jets.
Oh, the Jets,
yeah.
That's right.
He's Jets guy
I got to get caught up.
You got to get caught up with your quarterback.
I'm late on mini camps, man. I'm late on OTAs.
Interesting Star Tribune story by Brooks Johnson that does have potentially some ramifications from an ownership standpoint here involving both the Timberwolves ownership change and a anticipated Twins ownership change. Johnson writes, in 1983, Donald J. Trump made a $50 million offer to buy the Twins, a deal the businessman turned president failed to seal. Now...
Did we know that, by the way?
I had no knowledge of that.
Yeah, there's a link to that. I'm sure Minnesota could send it to us. I'm going to have to find that. That's interesting. I never knew that.
No, I certainly had no idea, or I don't remember it being mentioned. Now Trump's signature policy bill could end up punishing the next owner of the Twins, as well as another for sale Minneapolis pro franchise, the Wolves. A tax benefit that sports team owners have used to reduce their overall taxes would be cut in half under the big, beautiful budget bill recently passed by the House of Representatives. The move would raise nearly $1 billion in revenue through the next decade, according to the Joint Committee on Taxation, and only affect those who buy teams after the law took effect. For the next owners of the Twins and the NBA/WNBA Timberwolves Lynx organization, it's a race to the finish line to keep the lucrative tax break intact. Now, as they point out in the story, Pollard have owned the Twins for 4 decades. They bought the team for $44 million in 1984. Allegedly, we're closer to the end than to the beginning. That was according to a story. Was that in the Star Tribune as well? Wherever it was, saying that, prospects were improving. Now, I'll believe it when I see it, but that's what was reported at the time. Of course, Timberwolves and Lynx have been purchased, but that deal still needs to be approved by the NBA Board of Governors, correct? And I don't know if that's going to be on the docket.
I think we learned last week it was like late June.
Late June.
I think Johnny said that and Chris Hine too.
So this is, I guess, this would be a loss in the millions in financial benefits. How many millions, I don't know. But it's interesting that this is the, largely Republican bill, the big, beautiful budget bill. And in this case, it's not helping the rich. In this case, it potentially would hurt the rich, the mega rich.
The big-time rich,
The big-time rich who are involved in the case of the Wolves, purchasing the Wolves and the Lynx, and in the case of whoever the would-be owner is, trying to at least even come to terms with the Twins. So, an interesting wrinkle that I had not read about previously that you brought to my attention, which I think is a good one. I don't know that it's going to get in the way of either deal being done, but
and that's what somebody said at the end.
Don't want to give away money if they don't have to, correct?
No, they had a couple experts quoted in there. I know you read from some of them, but one of them basically said, like, any big deal that I have right now, if I'm anybody, I'm getting it wrapped up. I'm getting it on the books so that all of our stuff is grandfathered in. And then there was another expert towards the very bottom of the story that essentially said what you said, that is this going to get in the way? Is someone going to get to the finish line of this and go, yeah, but we're losing the tax break? Because these are still a lot of the appeal to these is the vanity of it.
Correct.
For some of these billionaires, more so than even the business side of it. Obviously, they want it to run well. It's a business. but because there's a finite number of them and only so many people can call themselves professional sports team owners, the general consensus is
it ain't going to get in
this
the way.
isn't going to be like a huge hurdle. Like, I loved everything until that bill got passed, and now we're blowing it all up. But it is something to factor in. It's pretty interesting. For sure.
You asked earlier about, on the Durant question, then who plays what position. Texter Ben, when Sam Mitchell was on discussing the idea of getting Durant, but only if you could, you'd only consider it if you could play him at the small forward spot. The starting lineup would be, as he remembered it with Mitchell, would be Anthony Edwards at the 1, Jaden McDaniels at the 2, Durant at the 3, Nas or Randall at the 4, Rudy at the 5. Now, that's an idea that you'd have to consider. There's always the question on Anthony Edwards whether you're doing a disservice asking him to have that much responsibility. And then if you could get like a Garland type, a Darius Garland type, you say it's the best of both worlds. Garland is a scorer and a distributor, but he's a more natural, he's used to having the ball in his hands even more than Anthony, and then you liberate Anthony to be a true number 2. And then maybe, though, if that's the lineup, obviously, if you're getting Garland, you're not going to get Durant as well.
Right.
And then, and you could argue that from a balance standpoint, that might be a better move. But we don't know what Cleveland's going to do. We don't even know what it would take there. And I do have my hesitation on Garland, and maybe it's unfair, is he's a talented player. But does he have enough of that edge? Because a lot of people looked at Cleveland and said they came off in that series kind of soft. So is that fair on him? I don't know. Would that stand in the way? Probably not, because that'd be a hell of a backcourt. There's no question about that.
But my question there is, if you're getting Garland, who's more of a point guard, right?
Yes.
Like, what do you? And again, we have no idea who's coming or who's going, but you just traded all the way up to pick 8 to get what you thought was your point guard of the future. Next season, also.
I see. Yes.
You know what I mean? Like with Dillingham is who I'm talking about.
But that wouldn't bother me that much, because I think I don't think he's ready. And beyond that, I think that's a problem you can live with, whether it ends up being that Garland ends up playing 25 minutes a night because he just ascends to that level. It's a fair question, because that is supposed to be your guy of the future. I think one of the downsides of playing him as little as you did this year is he's going to have to make a big jump to be a starter next year.
Yeah, I'm not even thinking he needs to be a starter next year. I'm just kind of thinking about minutes available in general. Like, if Dante's still here, we don't know what Conley's doing. I don't think Nikhil...
Well, Dante would be gone. Somebody would have to go to get Garland.
Probably.
Realistically, it would be one of the guards, I would think.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I suppose you're right.
Maybe you'd have to trade Dillingham. Part of that deal.
And maybe they will. I mean, they obviously aren't beholden to anybody.
I don't think the head coach loves him as much as the GM does.
The Pobo?
I don't. Now, that doesn't mean... Again, sometimes players, between first and second years, they make big jumps. They work hard in the offseason. They get to a different place. Allegedly, he's in the weight room all the time. He still looks like he weighs less than J.J. McCarthy did when he was just recovering from surgery.
Yes, he does. Maybe they have the same chef. They're eating the same lean proteins.
That's part of the problem. All right, let's come back, wrap up the show, remind you what you missed. Good mix of guests today and topics. And we'll let you know what's on tap for tomorrow's.
Farm Aid 40 is coming to Minneapolis. You can join Willie Nelson, Neil Young, Dave Matthews, and more. Saturday, September 20th at Huntington Bank Stadium. Celebrate 40 years of music, food, and family farming. Tickets are on sale now. Full details at KFAN.com. Keyword calendar. Show wrap presented by American Pressure. Commercial-grade pressure washer since 1975.
It's the bumper-to-bumper show wrap.
We started getting some heavy rain here in the St. Louis Park area. We went from over 90 to, I think, a cold front blowing through. I think tomorrow is high in the 60s.
Correct.
And then it looks like a bunch of 70s after that. So big change overnight with the whatever this front is, this Calcutta Clipper that's blowing through with, I guess, at least the potential for some violent weather as well. Is that correct? Shirt sleeves up.
Thunderstorms, maybe some hail, some high winds. I was checking out Ian Leonard's Twitter. That's what he was talking about.
Tomorrow, Lou Nanny, Dateline, Marrakesh. We think, if everything works, that's the plan. Chris Hine is going to stop by as well. Tomorrow is the release date as well for his new book, very imaginatively called Ant, right? The Anthony Edwards story. So Chris will be with us on the publication date. And the beauty of it is we'll get into a lot of the obvious questions about how the Wolves go forward from here. Where does Durant fit in potentially? The less sexy idea that there really are no trades, but just who the Wolves are able to sign, who they want to sign, and where it might go from there. So that's going to be the plan for tomorrow. Want to thank our two guests from today. Kyle Potter joined at 5:30 from Thrifty Traveler. John Athletic, or as a hockey fan called him, Johnny Sadlet. How do I say it? Sadletic. That's right. Yeah. As well. He tried to get Johnny going, got him semi-going.
Semi?
The beauty of it for me is I already had my rants on this last week, so I knew I wouldn't rise to it quite the same level because I've already got it out of my system.
That's true. You spent much of the show the next day.
Yes, I did.
On that.
The beauty of it is Johnny gets in. Johnny can kind of take up the
fresh meat,
the battle cry. Exactly it, and that's how it went. Also, we got into a lot of discussion at 3:30 about the transgender question as it relates to the 4A softball competition in the state of Minnesota. Elicited a lot of, I think, very thought-provoking texts from the audience, but we tried to go fairly deep into that subject as well. In fact, let me read you one other text regarding that conversation from Flim Flam. Lefties have allowed the righties to hijack the narrative of this conversation and make it so unserious. The left's inability to steer the trans debate away from boys and girls sports actually leaves the trans community more at risk of being discriminated against because the righties can scream even louder and lazier instead of discussing the real issue, the government's role in defending the trans community's dignity and equal rights in terms of renting an apartment, getting a job, they're qualified for, etc., without being discriminated against. The boys versus girls sports debate is not some righteous march towards equality, but a bunch of babies in 2025 missing the boat. Very interesting observation from regular contributor Flim Flam as well. I got a lot more texts that I didn't even have a chance to get to, including from some educators. I appreciate all of them. I'm keeping a hold of some of them as well, because it's a subject that we might indeed explore again in the future. There's never an end to it. The question is there ever going to be an opportunity to have a less than hysterical conversation about it that does not end up being breaking down to, if you're for this, then you must be against that. There is no discussion that can be had regarding fairness, not just for the individual, but for those competing, the girls in this case, high school, competing against that individual as well. And as I said before, some people have dismissed this on the basis of the numbers. What's the percentage here? I find that kind of disingenuous as well, because the numbers are going to increase. That seems fairly clear. And secondly, if you're in a position, if your kid is participating in an event where she is at that potential disadvantage, I don't think you care whether it's rare or semi-rare or completely rare. The fairness question still, to me, comes into play. And that's why I don't think it's, you can, because the feeling I get is if you dismiss the conversation on that basis, it's because you're not sure you can win it on the merits. And so you turn it in, why are we even bothering with something? This affects 9 people. Well, no, it affects actually a lot more people who are competing against whatever that number is as well, which is why I think it's absolutely a subject that we should be having here without having to tiptoe around the obvious concerns regarding the individuals involved. So that's where we're at with it. It got raised again, I think, largely because Tom Emmer tweeted. It was at O'Reilly. What's her name?
Gaines.
Gaines, is that the last name?
Yep.
Who's been front and center involved in all of this. I mean, when we've talked about this before, didn't you? I mean, you've reminded me. Martina Navratilova.
Yes.
Who's about as bleeding heart lefty as you get.
Yes.
has been front and center on this one for quite some time.
Yes, and like you said, went through the whole Title IX fight, went through the equal pay fight. I just watched a great Billie Jean King documentary on. You know where we've missed the boat on Billie Jean King?
Well,
she's an advisor for the hockey league.
That's true.
She was just here with the Frost. So the next season when she's here, and it's on Joe Anderson. I'm calling Mr. Fun.
Well,
we're gonna get that done to have Billie Jean come in studio.
That's it. Well, he in fairness to Mr. Fun, I think he has occasionally tried to get stuff on, and we haven't always said yes.
He has.
So maybe to that extent he got discouraged. That's probably a name that would have gotten our attention.
Yeah.
I think it's fair to say.
Well, a couple times it just didn't work out.
Yeah,
we didn't
that's
just
true,
try
too.
to straight out say no.
Yeah, I got you. That's also true.
That's our entry to Billie Jean.
Yeah.
But anyway, Martina went through, gay rights. I mean, she's been on the front lines of a lot of this stuff, and she is fiercely protective of women's sports right now.
100% true as well. Men's Health Magazine ranked the top 30 Major League ballparks. I was sure we'd be in the top 10, but we're only 12th? That's a good tease for tomorrow. Get to the bottom of that list.
Don't tell the new owners. They might not want to buy it.
Oh, man, that's frightening. Thanks for watching. Thank you for listening. And stay sky aware. We'll talk to you tomorrow beginning at 3 o'clock.